Welcome back to another episode of the Hunt Lift Eat podcast, brought to you by Hunt Lift Eat Official on the Instagrams. If you're not following us, you're wrong. What are you doing? Right, Luke?
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate a follow.
Have to do that.
Got to do it. Rules are rules. House rules, baby. Yeah, we're coming at you. Luke and I, we're doubling up today, doubling down, getting ahead of the game. We're banking some episodes. Luke's been telling me for years, speaking of parenting and our topic today, Luke's been trying to parent me for a while and be like, hey, stop living in a knife fight. Everything you do, create some space so you can have some more freedom in your life. So that's what we're doing today. We're creating space, giving us some banked episodes here.
That's where you get to the fun stuff, Carter.
That's right, man. It's all about the fun stuff. And we got Curtis joining us here for today's episode, man. This is your first time on the podcast, Curtis?
Yeah.
Nice, dude. You want to introduce yourself? Tell people who you are?
Yeah. My name's Curtis Sethaler. Live in West Central Illinois. So if you're from Illinois and think you're in Central Illinois, you're probably wrong. We're actually like midline of the state. So everybody around Chicago thinks that's like Northern Illinois and we're in Southern Illinois, but no, midline of the state. Yeah, day job. I am the CEO of a YMCA here. And then I teach an entrepreneurship class part-time too. And am dad of 3 daughters. And yeah, I've been married to my wife for 17 years, 17 and a half. So,
congrats.
Thanks.
It's a long time.
Yeah, it's dated for 5 years before that, and waited 3 years in till we decided to have our oldest daughter, and she's 14 now. And actually, just in the kitchen with her, she's a little bit above my shoulder in height now. I'm 6'5", so she's outgrown my wife and is growing like a weed, playing basketball and just having a blast with it.
That's awesome. You're a little bit ahead of the game of Luke and I. We've got younger kids. And you know, we're talking about parenting and kids today, which is something I've been excited to talk about. You and I have had some good conversations about that.
For sure.
You're ahead of us a little bit. It's hard to extrapolate like 17 years. You know, I know it'll be here one day and I'll be like, man, 17 good years, but I'll be a little more in the beard. I'll be looking like Luke over there, but 17 years, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's been a blast. So I think the finding out how to have fun. I know we were saying that before we like pressed record on this. Just figuring out how to have fun with your spouse and doing that. One thing that we do every week, we started doing this a couple of years ago, is me and my wife go on date night every Friday night. My kids are old enough now. I've got 14, 13, and 10. So they can chill out at home, kind of babysit each other, go to ball games and hang out, or hang out with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. But we can go do date night and just spend that time with each other, where we can just really get in lockstep. If you're a Jordan Peterson fan at all, his book Beyond Order, he said married couples need 90 minutes of intentional communication a week beyond just, hey, how's it going? How was work today? You need that like intentional time with each other to make sure you're in lockstep on just how you're doing your life. And, you know, me and Laura, both are, you know, professionals. She works full-time in healthcare. COVID was a huge thing for her. She's a respiratory therapist. So she was working borderline 100-hour weeks during the pandemic. I was home. I work in nonprofit. So I was home with my kids, you know, for 3 months. We just didn't see each other. And it sucked. And you know, when in relationships, like you can get those fractures to form, and that affects your parenting, it affects your marriage, it affects everything. And we recognized that, and we're like, we're going to do something different. I've got a good buddy who, him and his wife go on a date every week. And I was like, you know, we're going to start doing that. So it's been great for us. Like we have more fun 17 years in, I think, than at any other point. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that. I think the intentionality is so important, you know, and that's something that we're learning like as we go. And I got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and currently where we're at in Colorado Springs as we're moving in the transition right now. But we don't have like a good net, like our family's not here. We don't have any close friends that are in the area that can watch the kids. And so we've just started doing like in-home date nights, and sometimes it's just making dinner and decompressing a bit, watching TV, but like that, those intentional conversations, like having those punctuated, like it's so important, especially like the busier you get and the more you're doing, right? If you're depending on,
Yeah.
with us and the businesses and like all these different things, and like I get crazy tunnel vision, which is good. It's why I can do what I can do, but it can be bad because I compartmentalize and I can not pay attention. I think I'm very good about being mindful with the kids, but it's usually my wife that pays the price. And so like having that carved out time is so important, and it's been a game changer for us. And we take advantage of other times, like we travel a lot. So like when you're locked in the car with each other, turn the music off, and then just have the conversations that can't get punted. You can't run away from each other, and that's something we started doing. I mean, when we were newlyweds, when we would drive home back, it was like 9 hours from Georgia to Virginia and Tennessee, and like working through all the shit, and I think that so many people just punt that for 10, 15, 20 years. And then all of a sudden it's like, this is dead. And it's just that constant effort all the time. So yeah, I love that, man.
Yeah.
It's too easy, right? I can do it. Like, I get 2 weeks away from when I wanted to talk to my wife about something, because I get in a rut and I get in a routine, and like, I'm teaching, and then I'm coaching, and then, maybe I'm doing something in the evening, and then like we put the kids down, and then I jump on a podcast, and then it's Tuesday, and then it's Wednesday, and then it's Thursday, and then you're a week later, and you're like, damn, and I forget everything anyways. And I'm like, damn, I meant to have that conversation a week ago or 2 weeks ago. That intentionality, it's super important, man.
I can confirm you do that. Carter, did you talk to Robin about that hunting trip?
That's awesome. Yeah, I started getting in a habit too, just like texting Laura anytime like something cool happens. She's like the first person that I tell like anything to, and it's so easy to not do that, especially with her like being in healthcare and stuff, because she can't always answer her phone. So if I have like something awesome happens, like you want to share that with somebody because you want them to like be amped for you too, and it's like, okay, like she should be the first person that I go to and stuff like that. And there was a time when that wasn't necessarily the case, and having to really recenter through a lot of hard conversations around that. Like, no, you're my primary contact for everything. So if something cool happens, if I can't talk to her on the phone, like just shooting her a text, like, hey, remind me later to tell you about this conversation that I had this morning, so I can just at least get that preface, so I don't forget it, later on then, and it gets Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whenever. So she gets that text right off the bat. So at the end of the day, or when we're laying down to go to sleep after we get the kids all put to bed at night, or after ball games or whatever, it's like, hey, you wanted to tell me something this morning. Like, oh yeah. Oh, I don't know. Little things.
I've just realized that's, the longer, some of it's, just been by the nature of stuff, but like your spouse should be your best friend. Like that's the person that you're talking to. That's the person. And there's so many guys that like, I mean, I talk to guys obviously more than I talk to the ladies, but it's just like, they don't tell their wives anything. And then they create this separation of this life and then their home life. And then that can lead to problems long term, for a variety of reasons. And that constant just communication relationship and putting into it and back into it. And like, it's so important. And to relate it to like hunting, like so many guys are like, oh, I gotta ask my wife, or I can't go because my wife. It's like, I have a relationship with my wife to where like she never is like, now if it's a long trip and I've traveled a bunch, it might be well, I'd like you to be home a little bit, and it's like, well, that's fair. It's a dialogue, right? Instead of this idea of like, I got to ask for permission to do something, and that's just like wild. It's like I don't want to do that. I don't want in this relationship. It's like, hey, I'm going to do this, and then like I know that because I'm doing that, then on the backside, you got to apply that much more. Carter and I talk about it all the time. It's like deposits in the bank account. Like, don't overdraft that bank account, right? On the family side, you're going to live this life you're chasing deer, you're traveling, you're doing cool stuff. Well, there's that balance of like, you've got to make sure you're doing that. And it's the front end relationship. And it's not that I do this with my wife so I can hunt, right? But it is the backside of, it doesn't feel like, and especially with me, because I've been gone so much over this. I mean, really since we started dating. I mean, we started dating in March. I deployed in October, and then it's been 2 deployments, living in different states twice. Like now I'm living in Wyoming, renovating our house, and she's in college. Like, it's just, you've got to just be so much more mindful of the time because it'll sneak up on you. Like, you won't even realize how hard it is for your spouse who's with the kids, or,
Right.
in your case, in the job. And like, it just blows up and you're like, oh shit, I should have been way. And I mean, this just happened to me. It's like, I'm grinding. I'm trying to get this house done. I'm trying to do this. I got this travel.
Yeah.
We were running clients in the East Coast. So I'm trying, I'm trying to do all this stuff. And then like, oh, Caroline's like, I'm almost like not leaving me or anything, but like she's at our breaking point because she's just getting thrown around, and you're like, fuck, I need to be paying attention to this.
Right.
And it's so important.
Yeah. And that's the primary relationship too. I mean, if you're not like, you and your spouse aren't good, stuff's not going to be cool with your kids either, because they're, super perceptive of that.
Yeah.
They're great at, they feel the energy in it. And I think just the way that culture is now too, with, broken homes and all of that, that like, they know that their friends are going through divorces. And if you two are into it and they can feel that, that's the first thought they jump to.
Yeah.
I remember like one of the first, me and my wife are both really passionate. So like we understand that we're fighting for each other, even if it seems like we're fighting with each other at times. We've had that conversation with the kids, is really funny. Because me and Laura both think we're right, and we settle it. It's just fun because we're just super competitive. So we both like to be right all the time. But the first like disagreement I remember us like having when our kids were kind of old enough to understand like something, they were, oh my God, are you guys getting a divorce? And it was like, no, that's not entering the chat. Like, that's not it. But that's what they're around all the time. It's because they're at school and it's like, oh, well, so-and-so's parents are getting a divorce, and they were fighting and then they got a divorce. And it was like, well, hang on. Like, you need to understand, like, me and your mom love each other. And like, that's not a thing for us. Like, we're going to work out whatever. Like, when you hear us, it's because we're passionate. We both think that we're right, but we're going to come to a consensus and we're going to be okay. Because it is worth fighting for, because we know what we signed up for when we said I do, and we're in it. That isn't grass is greener anywhere else. It's like grass is greener where you water it, and we're going to fight for all of it. And we're going to show our kids that too, because they don't see that a lot in culture anymore.
Yeah, and you guys have probably seen this, and Luke definitely have seen it in the military, but like a lot of my buddies in my circle in college, we all ended up getting married around the same time. And a lot of guys, you watch a lot of guys who definitely married the wrong person, and everybody knew like right off the bat, like that I don't know if we should do this. And maybe there's a perceived pressure to get married or whatever it is. And then like
good, especially is in the military.
Yeah.
Massive financial and benefit.
Right.
Like, it makes a ton of sense in the military to get married, which is a problem. And that's why the divorce rate is, I mean, there's multiple reasons, deployments, time away, but it's not just that. It's guys rush into it and they marry the wrong person. They don't set expectations. They don't communicate. They don't, it's all these things we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you see like buddies who are getting divorced young, like 24, 25, 26, like before they're 30. And, or double down and have a kid, right? Like, that's going to fix a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's still a conversation. It's like, I know people are like, well, we had a kid thinking it was going to fix things. And it's like, what the hell? Like, no, I was 20 when me and Laura started dating. I was 25 when we got married. So we did 5 years of the whole dating thing and figuring life out. We were atypical. We didn't live together before we got married. So like we had a shared apartment, but she would crash in. She worked nights at the time, so she would like sleep during the day after we were engaged. But she was kind of between her parents' house and there. She'd crash the apartment, and then I'd get there and she'd leave. But like we did it kind of old school. When we paid for our own wedding, we fought through everything on our own. And I think when you do it that way and you put in the time of actually figuring out who somebody is. And I don't know how long you guys were like dating your spouses before you got married, but there's this big, I mean, I know a ton of people who, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then they jump into a wedding, and it's like, dude, like that's a big move. Like, I don't remember what we were talking about. Me and Laura were talking about something yesterday, and I was like, we've been together for like 22 years total, and I didn't know that about you. Like it's basketball game, somebody blew their knee out, and it was like the osteo part of it, like you could see the girl's knee like separate. It was gross. But she had to like get up and walk outside, and she works in healthcare. Just like if it would have been an artery, she would have been fine. But like it was like orthopedics. She was like, "Oh, I got to go get some. I got to go get air. I'm going to pass out." I was like, "Huh, 22, almost 23 years together. I didn't know that about you. That's crazy." Like, and we laughed about it. But it's, people want to jump into things for that quick fix, that Amazon culture of I want it right now, and if I'll have it in 2 days. And they don't want to put in the time to actually figure stuff out on the front end. Like, how is this decision going to affect things 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? Versus like, I just want to jump into this now so I can, hit whatever the next goal is.
Yeah, if you're, there are guys and gals that are younger that are listening, if you're dating somebody or if you're, newlyweds or whatever, like figuring that out is the so important, and like setting those conditions and those expectations. That was one of the few things early in Carolina and I's relationships that I did right, was especially with finances, because I looked at it and it was like I knew, like, once I get married, I'm not doing this yo-yo thing. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the number one cause of divorce in the United States, it's financial stress.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do we get on the same page with money? And it was, she hates, thinking about it. She doesn't have a background. Her family never taught her anything. It's just like, oh, it just works out, And so it took me like literally making like graphs on a whiteboard and like drawing it out. And at the time it wasn't business. It was real. I mean, it's kind of a business, but real estate investing is what I was dabbling in. And it was like, but like, so I was like, I'm not just like going to bank all this cash and have it sitting in a bank account pulling 0.5% of interest. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to do these things, and we're going to live below our means. And like, if I hadn't had that and set that tone, I should have told her, I was like, we can't like figure this out and have these conversations. Like, we are not going to get married because it's going to just set us up for failure on the backside. And it was so important. And it's still a, struggle. I mean, when I bought the sewing machine for HLE, she was like, you're wasting $350. Like, it's like, I just bought you a $25,000 vehicle. Like, it's just a disconnect there, right? Because our brains work different, because we're not the same. Like, women and men are different.
Right.
Newsflash, 2024. We are,
for real.
And especially like me and the way my brain works, it's like, it's different than a lot of other guys. It's kind of crazy. And so it's like having that, laying that out, talking about like how, like making sure our visions are aligned. And that's something I've really tried to do here recently, is because I do have like, I have goals, and I know where we're going, and I'm all in right now. And so I got to like look back and like make sure, like, hey, are we still on the same page? Is this what we want? Are we going in the right alignment? And because there's so many folks where it's like the expectations are just skewed because we don't have these conversations. Like one party is like, thinks we're going this direction. The other party thinks they're going this direction. And they just come in, and then it's just friction. And then on the backside, they can never find that alignment.
Yeah. No, I mean, for us early on, like and it was before I think either of us really probably had the maturity or even the understanding of what we were doing. But we were like, what kind of a relationship do we want to have? Like, where do we want to go? We didn't have we didn't have any money. Like, I was working a $10 an hour plumbing job in my hometown, going nowhere fast. And she was working at a hospital in Quincy, where we live now, and was still working full time essentially at McDonald's there too, as a shift manager, because gas was $4 a gallon. And, it was just that conversation of like, what kind of life do we want to have? And she came home one day after we'd been married for about a year, and was like, we can't live the life that we said we were going to live doing what we're doing right now. I was like, I don't know what else to do, because I didn't really want to leave like my hometown. It was that whole thing of like, I grew up here, like whatever. I absolutely hated Quincy. Like, when I was growing, I was like 40 minutes from home. It was all the sports rivalries, of the last place on earth I wanted to live. And she came home from work one Sunday night, married a year, and she's like, we can't build the life we talked about doing what we're doing right now. We need to move to Quincy. And I told her to buy me a big screen TV and find me a new job. And that took her 24 hours. So she came home with a classified ad, because it was 2008. That was still a thing. And she said, here's an ad for a plumbing job in Quincy. Do we making more money right off the bat? Send in your resume, which I'd never done before. So sent that in. Fastest the mail has ever run. I mailed it on Tuesday, interviewed on Wednesday, had the job on Thursday. and we moved to Quincy 2 weeks later, and my life absolutely flipped upside down. And we've been in this community now for 16 years, and I get to do stuff that I never in my life imagined I would be able to do, and it's 100% because we were in lockstep from the beginning of this is the kind of life we want to live. Like if somebody's in front of us in the grocery line and can't afford to pay for their food, we want to be the people who can pay for that. If somebody is just down on their luck and needs somebody to talk to, we want to be those people. When you get the annoying Jehovah's Witnesses that knock on your door and want to like preach to you, we want to be the people that are welcoming enough to invite them in, even though we don't agree with them, and just love on those people in a huge way and leave everybody that we come into contact with better and more hopeful. Like those are the things that we wanted to build a marriage on, and we're still doing it. And it's been absolutely crazy to see that. And because of that, like this is what we see in our kids too. Where kids are so reactionary and emotional and pulled in a million different directions. Like we've got 3 daughters who will sit down and be like, "Hey, like so and so is like not getting along with whoever," and I'm like, "All right, well, cool. What are we going to do about that?" She's like, "Well, nothing. They're just being like emotional." Like, oh, okay, or just seeing my girls just work their ass off to get stuff that they want, and knowing that comes from like seeing what me and Laura do and seeing how that influence runs that direction. But if you're not in alignment in your marriage, exactly what you said, Luke, then you're all over the place, and your kids are going to be all over the place too. And that's what we see in culture now is like the biggest problem with kids is their parents.
Yep.
100%. And looking at the notes you sent for topics, all of it's really spot on and stuff that is fresh in my mind, because like where my kids are, I'm constantly thinking about this, and like of late I've been really reflective on my childhood and like things that my folks did well, things my folks did bad, all these things that I think that we have to think about, because like I very much do not want to become and and raise my kids in the environment that I was raised in. And that's something that's really big and important for me. But I think it does, and I always tend to look at everything from macro down. And so you've got like the defining your family, who we are and where we're going. And I think that's so important. And, I'll turn it over to you in a second, but like, I think I would add one thing to that is like where we came from, as a family, because I think perspective, and that like historical perspective on like genealogy and families, it's just fallen to the wayside. A lot of people couldn't even tell you the names of their great grandparents, much less who they were and how they got here. And like that's something that my old man he's a major history buff, and like I'm where we're from in Virginia has been in the family since before the American Revolution, and so there's a lot of history there. And I think that's so important. I was reading a book on Robert the Bruce from when I was in Scotland, and like the true story, and not like Braveheart. But there's something that like I don't know why, but this just stuck in my head, and it was like the Highlanders, when they would go into battle, they would sing the names of their ancestors going back so far.
Yeah.
And I think that's like so powerful. And like when I think about like why did they do that? Why was that their battle cry?
Yeah.
And it's like it's laying down like these are all these men, and they probably didn't sing the women in that time, let's be real. So like singing, but the men, right, that forged the path to get there. And when the struggle and the hardship, there's a perspective there that I think is so important of like my family, like, they were Scots-Irish immigrants. They were displaced from the lowlands in Scotland because of war. They went to Northern Ireland. There was conflict there. They came to America. They literally were the frontiersmen. Like they fought, and like knowing all this, it's so improbable that like we as people come to be. Like when you think about all the things that have to happen the right way, and the sacrifices of those that came before us, that is something that I think we've lost entirely, like in our society. Like it's always blown my mind, because it was so normal for me to learn this history that like so many people, and it's something that I want to be really cognizant of plus I think it's just how we honor, like, especially the ones that we know, right? Like my grandfather that my kids will never meet, and like Vietnam veteran, like public servant, farmer, like carved out a living, like took care of his family, like very, pious man, like just one of the strongest men I've ever known. Like I owe it to him and how he shaped me to tell his story to my children and so on. And like we're losing that at such a rapid pace, and we're so distracted.
Yeah. I think redefining it too. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on my family history and all that. It's a shit show. There's no other way to describe it. It just is. I'm a product of a broken home. Like I don't have any relationship with my biological dad. Like I know who he is. I know where he lives. But at the time I was born and growing up, him and my mom, he just wasn't a good dude then. He became one, it would appear. Him and my younger brother, when my mom was pregnant with my younger brother, my biological dad had another woman pregnant at the same time. And my mom was like not putting up with that. So, split. He ended up marrying her and then by all accounts became a really good dude. Hell, maybe he'll see this. Um, but seemed like a solid dude. I've seen him at basketball games and stuff because my oldest daughter and his granddaughter actually played in junior high against each other without really knowing it. So let that like just twist your brain around, like sitting in a gym across from your biological dad and not having like a relationship there at all. Wild time. Father's Day weekend is when that happened nonetheless, which was really cute. So God had some pretty cool tricks up his sleeve that weekend. But for me, like having to make peace with that too and understanding like I wouldn't be who I am without those experiences. And I'm strong enough to be able to bear that for my family. And even to be able to look at that and to tell you guys, like, I don't have a relationship with my biological dad, and he wasn't, a great guy when I was born or even those few years after, but he became one. And I know he became one because I've seen it. Like, I've seen him cheer at basketball games. I've seen this other part of it. And in a really freaking weird way, like, I'm proud of the guy that he became. And I'm super proud of the guy that I became as a result of that, which the mental gymnastics to get to that point are weird at best. But for me to have to or to be able to then like define that and then look at how I raise my kids in that same vein, like for him, whatever he was going through at the time to not reach out. He lived 18 miles from me, and me and my brother have the same biological parents. My sister is from my mom remarried when I was 5. So I've got 2 other siblings, but for him, my biological dad, not to like have a relationship with us from 18 miles away, growing up, like that was a pretty hard thing to like to go through. And when I had like my kids and my oldest daughter was 2, which was like the same age when my parents split, to have that realization of like, I would crawl over 18 miles of broken glass to get to my daughter. There's not a damn thing in the world you could put in. I don't care what it is. I will go through it. I don't care who it is. I will go through it. Like, you're not keeping me away from my kid. And that's like what I've chased in doing that of being a present parent and being one that's, a coach and an advocate and whatever I need to be for my kids. And part of that is requiring me to live in such a way that like I'm going to push myself to the absolute max all the time because I want my kids to do the same damn thing. I want them to figure out what they're made of. I want them to push. I don't know if you guys have read The Power of One More, Ed Milet's book. I heard his speech on it where he says one of the most insidious forms of child neglect is a parent who refuses to chase their dreams. Yeah. Because you just sit there in nothing. And you don't push and you don't strive and you don't try to become better. And, for everything that I went through growing up and all the excuses in the world that I could have for not pursuing, a better life for myself, like I have all of them. Doesn't matter. Like my story is what I make it. And because I'm making it something, like my kids are going to do that too. And I get to define family, based on that.
Yeah. It's scary to think about like how many people, coworkers, friends, like whatever, acquaintances that are just complacent in their relationship, both with their spouse and with their kids, honestly. And like, you're going to work the same boring ass job, which is fine. Like safety's fine, but like no goals, no aspirations,
right?
Through the motions and doing the same thing forever. And, just like on, autopilot forever. Like what a shame, dude. Like I want to impress my wife every day. And like, I want to be the best dad ever to my kids like I want them to brag about me to their kids at school. You know what I mean? Like every day.
Yeah. Yeah. What you don't want is that because you all tend, at least when when they're not sitting 18 miles away neglecting you. You put your father as like that Superman figure in your head, and then you come to a point in time where that persona gets popped.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen no matter what, but I don't want it ever to happen in a way that is because of me not doing the things that I'm supposed to do, or me not honoring their mother, or me not, living the life in accordance. And I love what you said about, and from Ed Milet, like, I think that's so important. And it's something I talk to Caroline about all the time, because like, it's tough, right? Like when you've got something and you're like scratching and clawing to move forward and build something and break away from the convention of this world. Like the system is not, whether it's by design or not, it forces you down a certain path, right? Like, if you're an entrepreneur, like try to buy a house if you're self-employed. Like it's pretty freaking difficult. Like everything is kind of stacked against you in a lot of ways. And so, but it's like, we talk about it. It's like, I'm not just doing, yes, some of it, a lot of it's for me, right? And it's for my passions and like what I want to do, because if I'm taking care of myself in that regard, it makes me better on the backside. And I'm not sitting here a hamster on the wheel, hating my life, punching a time card, doing a job I hate, working in a cubicle in this slow hell that I just come home and then take that out on my family. But it's also that exact thing of like showing my kids that like you can do anything. Like, and I think that our generation, that was kind of lip service. Like, oh, you can be an astronaut, you can be this, you can do anything you want to do in this world. But there's no actual instruction. And like the follow up to that is, but it takes fucking work and a lot of it.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't know, I still don't even, what I've realized through the last 5 years of my life is like, I still don't even know what hard work actually is. Like every time I put in a level that I think that like this, we ran a course for these clients and a learn to hunt course. I put 60 hours into the slide deck alone, 60 hours into a slide deck. And I did that in about 5 days, maybe 4. And like, just in the making sure that everything was right, everything formatting, like just 60 hours. And like, I've never put that much work into one thing in my life in that span of time. And it was like the bar. And then I was like, oh, that's what this looks like. And like, that's the difference. Like, it's not hard. Like, you want to be good. You want to be in the top 90% of people. It's not hard. Show up on time, be able to like look somebody in the eye, shake their hand, and do what you say you're going to do. Top 90%. You want to get in the top 3%? Good fucking luck. Like, and I'm not even close to it, because those guys and gals are working at such a level that like, we can't even like fathom really, like when it comes down to, and that's where I'm working towards on the path. And so it's like setting that and like teaching my kids what work actually is, and it's through the example, and not like, and I feel bad kind of saying this, but like, I just wanted like my memory, like my old man would come home from work and he worked his ass off. He's a career Army guy, like put it all in there, worked long hours, but he would just like sit on the couch and like on a Saturday, maybe go mow the yard, and then he'd be like, you need to go run for football, like go get your sprints in. And it's like, I look back on that and I'm like, how much more powerful would that have been if he walked up with his running shoes, threw me mine, and was like, hey, we're going to go hit the hill.
Yeah. Right.
Like that little, it's so like, but it's just like, that probably would have changed so much for me, because it, like, I was so rebellious and I just fought everything. But like, I look back on it and it's like, I don't need to go tell my kid to do something. I've got to show them and lead them to it, to the point that they want to. Like, my son wants to help me when I do things, right? Like, they want to be involved. But when you separate it and you work there, I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I think it's important.
No, I think you're on the money. Like, you have to set the example, and if you want your kids to do stuff with you, and I think that's, as dads, like, that's what we want. Like, I've got all girls. I would put my girls at the same age up against any boy their age.
Hell yeah.
I love watching my daughter just crush kids' spirits. It's my favorite thing. Like, we were in Chicago on like a family weekend, and we were doing a rope climb, and there's this dad, like, very like alpha dad, like his kid was trying to climb this rope, and my oldest daughter Maddie like looks at me, she's like, can I go climb it? And I was like, you're only climbing that damn thing if you win. Like, you better make it to the top and smoke that kid. And she climbs up there and like rings the bell at the top, and I was like, hell yeah. And you could see this other dad like getting pissed at his kid. And then Tori, my middle daughter's like, can I try it? It's like, same rule, like, you got to win, like, go right up that thing. And then my youngest, Abby, and this has been 6 years ago now. So, I mean, she was 4 or 5 years old. She's like, well, can I try? I was like, same deal. Like, go win. And she scurries right up that rope too. And like, encouraging them, but they do these things because they've seen us do them. Like me and Laura would do mud runs, and like Madison was 7 years old when she did her first 5K mud run, and she only did it because we had a friend who was supposed to meet us there and didn't show up, and we had somebody there like to babysit Madison for us, and like we're up there signing up, and she's 7 years old, and she's like, Dad, can I run this? I was like, you want to do like a mud run with us? Like it's 3.1 miles, and she was like, well, you can carry me if it gets too hard. She's 7. I was like, okay, no way I'm carrying her. Not a chance. So I'm like, all right, we'll just run to the first obstacle. Okay. And then she jumps over it and like run to the next one. Okay. And then it was little by little. And Laura, my wife, like twisted her knee on one of them. And by the time we got halfway through it, Laura's limping and she's like struggling to keep up. And Madison's like, we have to leave her. It's like she's slowing us down. And I'm like, listen, like I love your spirit. But we're not leaving Mom. Like that's not a good career move for me. So like I love it, but they do these things because they've seen us do them. And like I'm 42 years old, and I had a conversation today with a guy I went to college with, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm old." I'm like, "You're a year older than me, man. Like, come on. Like you're not. I'll never get old. I'm going to die young as late as possible because I'm going to keep pushing myself. I'm going to keep doing stuff with my kids and pushing them too." I made a deal with Maddie's a freshman. I made a deal with her earlier this year. I was like, I will buy you whatever shoes you want for basketball if you start JV as a freshman. She was like, Kobe's. I was like, oh yeah, I'll buy you Kobe's. So I ended up in a conversation with her coach the other day and was like just talking to her. And he's like, man, she's like busting her butt. She hadn't started a game yet, but I went ahead and bought her the shoes because I knew she was trying. She started Saturday as a freshman on the JV team, which is just killer. And then at the end of the game, she comes up and gives me a big hug. She's like, I earned the Kobe's. Like the first thing she said to me was like, hell yeah, you did. And like, that's the proud dad stuff. But she does this stuff because we've set the expectation for hard work, but we've also lived out that example. Like you have to do this stuff. Like your kids you're not going to talk your kids into doing something. They have to see the example set. Like they're visual learners. I mean, if you don't believe that, look at all the people who are subscribing to stupid shit on YouTube. Like, I guarantee you my daughters are upstairs right now watching some goofy thing on YouTube of somebody like, I don't even know. Something that doesn't need to be on there. They don't need to be watching probably. But, they have to have parents who are engaged in doing this stuff.
Yeah, man. Instilling values and character is like, that's all you can ever want, right? That's the goal. And it's like, I found it way more challenging than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
All I want is like, I want my kids to like want to work out and like to enjoy fitness, enjoy being outside. And if one of my daughters wants to go hunting, like if one of them loves it, I'll be stoked, right? That would be sweet. Yeah. But if they love taking care of their body and being outdoors, like I'll be stoked. So you try to, right? You mirror, or you hope they mirror those, activities that you do. And I've changed my training habits, right? I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and it's just busy, right? It's a busy time, right? And my oldest is at a point where she wants to come work out with me. She wants to exercise with me, which is like the greatest thing in the world. And I've caught myself a couple times rolling my eyes where I'm like, oh, like I do one of those when she comes in when I'm working out because it derails everything. The workout's over. Like we're just goofing around and, she's doing her push-ups and like, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm no longer doing my squats or whatever I'm doing. And then I catch myself and I'm like, I slap myself on the wrist. I'm like, you fucking better enjoy this. You better love this. Like, because this is everything right here. This, if you negatively reinforce that behavior, done, gone forever.
Yeah, game over.
She's not gonna do it anymore. And so I had to change my tune to that because I want her to want it. I want her to want to earn the Kobe's, right? Like that's sick.
Yeah. I think, you guys are in a better spot with this than I was when my kids were younger. Cause like birth to 8 years old, kids are like a blank computer. you're just shoving programming in them. And it's everything from like your relationship with your spouse to like how you talk to them to, the eye rolls, the little things that they pick up on. Like they're really bad interpreters of like stuff, but they're really great observers. It's like, oh, every time I asked to go to the gym, dad rolled his eyes, or dad went, oh man, like, you really want to go today? Tried to talk me out of it. And like, I didn't have that level of awareness when my kids were little. So, I mean, I'm grateful every damn day that they actually want to do stuff with me, because I know I screwed a lot of that up when they were younger. I worked construction when my oldest was little until she was 6. So like I was gone a lot. Like I'd drop her off at 5 a.m. I'd be gone all week. So like, I was lucky the first 7 months I blew my knee out when my wife was 8 months pregnant. So I got to spend the first 7 months of my oldest life home with her, just because I couldn't work, which is awesome. But right back into the grind after that, so I wonder how much I could have done better if I would have had that level of awareness when my kids were really little, and how much further ahead they would be even now, because, I would have been better.
Well, I think one of the great things with kids, though, is how resilient they are. And I think that's something that we discount a lot of times in all facets, and they are elastic. Like I always say, like, one of my kids will fall up, like, yeah, they bounce. But it's real in everything. And it's just, I think it's the constant over those long periods of time without any sort of course correction, because I think they adapt, and they're so resilient. They adapt so quickly to external stimuli. And I think that's something that like I just try to really be cognizant. I look at like all my issues. I was a behavioral kid problem. I was a problem until I was like probably 28, for being honest. Like in one way or another, I matured, but I still had that, and I went into boozing, chasing women, all these other things that weren't productive and things that I should have been doing. And so I just try to like look back, and it's just like I was a hothead. I had a crazy temper like through high school, early into college. I got it mostly under control, but then it was still would flare up when I was in the Army, like early in our marriage, like things. And it was just like you start going through these things where I don't want to live like this anymore. It's like, how do I keep that? And one of the things that I always like really think about is like I wouldn't want to change anything for how I came up, because it's made me who I am today.
Right.
I don't want my kids to grow up in that same environment. But what I've seen and what I observe from other folks that are trying to course correct is there can be an overcorrection, right? And like, and I see it with a lot of folks that have come and like immigrants, right? And it seems to be like the third generation starts to lose, like first generation hard work ethic, hard on their kids, but then that second generation has this like idea of like, I don't want my kids to have to struggle like I did, which is totally admirable, and I appreciate the hell out of it. In some cases that can be bad, because you're not still instilling that. So it's like manufacturing controlled hardship instead of just having like a chaotic, volatile household that is creating it. And that's something like it's small right now, but like with Barrett, I will be wrestling, right? And he's getting all fired, but I'll hold him until he starts to get uncomfortable. And then when he starts to like panic or starts to like squeal or whatever, I just like loosen up enough, and then I just talk him through, like work it through. And it's just like, it's one to prep him for wrestling, because I'm going to put him in wrestling soon. But it's just like this, like, one, you're okay, you're just uncomfortable. And that's why I think wrestling jiu-jitsu is so good for kids and people in general. Like the number of people that just can't experience discomfort. Like I was doing combatives. I trained jiu-jitsu for a while. I was doing combatives in the Army, and I was making guys tap just by like putting them in uncomfortable positions. It wasn't even like anything that blew my mind. These are infantry officers. And I'm like, why are you, like, you're not in threat of anything. I'm not choking you. I'm not torquing a joint. Like, why are you? And it's because they had not actually felt that physical discomfort. And so it's like applying that to Barrett. And like, I see it, like he smashed his face on this table. I was like, damn, everybody's going to think I punched him. I mean, he had this massive bruise, and he cried, but he cried for probably about 30, 45 seconds, got up, and then ran on and kept playing. And it's like just not babying them every time they fall, not catering to their every need, like not being neglectful, but like make them work through it and build that. And it has to be deliberate, because like everything in your being when you've got a baby is you want to just wrap them in bubble wrap and take care of them. And it's like, you've got to let them go experience the world. Jordan, you were talking about Jordan Peterson. Like, it's like, let your kids do, let your kids do the dangerous things safely.
Carefully.
Yeah.
Carefully.
Yep.
Yeah. Do dangerous things carefully. And like, let them take those risks, take those chances. And like, it's so important.
Luke, you're the only other person I've ever talked to who did. I did the exact same thing with Maddie when she was a baby. I would hold her tight exactly to where she was like, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I'm like, you can breathe because you're talking. Like, calm down. Like, rule number 1, don't freak out. And that is like literally house rule number 1 here. Like, it's just anytime somebody's like upset, it's like, hey, what's rule number 1? Like, that's what we talk through. Rule number 1, don't freak out. Okay. When you freak out, everything goes sideways.
Yeah.
So don't freak out. And like, I would hold her like, rule number 1, don't freak out. Like, I'm not holding you tight enough to hurt you. I'm not even holding you tight enough where you can't breathe. You can get out of this. Like, calm down and like think through this. And she would start to wiggle. Oh, I can get my arm out. And like, and this has like, it sounds crazy, but this has like real life implications in it. Like, our dog ate an entire bottle of ibuprofen. So 1 ibuprofen will kill a dog. So like, our dog, they made noise. So Lemmy's an idiot. He's awesome. He's an idiot. But he got on our bed and like shook this thing, ate the entire bottle of ibuprofen. I was on a Zoom call. He was like a year old when it happened. I'd pick Maddie up from school. And I get off the Zoom call and she's standing outside my office door with the dog on a leash and a bottle of ibuprofen, the empty bottle. And she was like, let me eat all of these. Is he going to die? I was like, I don't know, but we have to go to the vet right now. So I called the vet, flew across town to get to the vet. And they were like, the only reason this dog is probably alive is because your daughter reacted that way. And it wasn't until like we got the dog to the vet, they got him throwing up, that she sat back in my truck and then lost it and started crying because she was scared. But in that moment of high pressure, high stress, there was no panic in her. It was like, what do we need to do? Rule number 1, don't freak out. What the hell needs done? Let's get it done. And then we will worry about like the emotion of all this later. 14 years old, she still does it. Like, she's just calculating. Like, if something is on fire and everything is under pressure, like Maddie is on it.
Dude, what a vote of confidence for your daughter, man. And I think about that all the time. I have 2 girls too, man. And like, just with the news and, I'm a teacher, and one of our kids, like one of our students, like almost got like kidnapped like 2 weeks ago in like a very affluent suburb of Atlanta.
Sheesh.
They were out like playing in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like what you would hope, like what you want your kids to go do, right? Because all these kids do is hang out on screens and, not play outside like we did growing up. Then I hear that, I'm like, gosh, like it's nothing sacred anymore. Like, what a disaster. And then you hear about the young girl at UGA who was, attacked and killed and raped. And I'm like, what a disaster, man. And you just want to be there to protect them at all times. And, you talk about building kids, and that's like got my wheels turning. And that's an amazing vote of confidence for your daughter to know, like, okay, like she'll be able to think through emergency situations moving forward forever, right? Whether it's in business or like actual emergency situations or, jobs or whatever. That's kind of all you can hope for as a dad. Like, that's fantastic.
Yeah. We had this fall, we had like, there was a bunch of them going around, like kids calling in threats to schools and stuff like that. So there was like, that happened here. Somebody made a Snapchat threat. They were going to shoot up the school. And parents were picking up their kids left and right. And she texts me and she's like, hey, this is going on. Is it true? Do you know anything? I was like, I don't know anything else other than like what you probably know more than I do at this point. Cause like kids are going crazy on social media, She was like, should I stay at school or should I come home? And I was like, my gut feeling is there's nothing to this because usually they're not going to make like a post about something. I was like, but honestly, Maddie, like I think your calm demeanor and how you're going to carry this is going to be good for your friends. Like, that said, if you want me to come get you, I'll be there in 5 minutes. She's like, I think I'm going to stick around for a little bit. And she did. She hung around for a couple hours and then it got worse and worse and worse. And nothing ended up happening, but she texted me and she was like, come get me. I was like, on my way, and picked her up. But she made it those other few hours. And I really think it was because of like her ability to think calmly. And she's like, okay, this probably isn't true. And how can I be here for my friends? And in that high pressure situation, if something would have gone sideways, something bad would have happened, like I trust that she is going to respond in a way where she's probably going to be the one to save her friends. And that's not like God, I've never wanted anything to happen to my kids, but if my kid can be the one who's calm in a situation to be, you know, to rescue somebody else, like hell yeah, I'm raising heroes, I'm raising monsters, and I can't freaking wait to see what they're going to do as adults.
Yeah, I love that you gave your daughter the agency to make that decision on her own. I think so often we know it's best because I said so, right? That's how I was raised.
Yeah.
Everything was because I said so. And I like look back on that and it's like if I had just like been able to have some conversations, I probably would have. I was, smart enough to like think logically typically, I mean I was still a dumb,
Yeah.
bullheaded teenage boy, but like that idea of like because I said so is so you're gonna do one of two things, right? You're gonna do what they did to me, which was create this like ultra rebellious, fight the man, like just, or you're just gonna have this docile, follow the rules, stay in your lane,
Yeah.
do what you're told, color in the lines. I don't think either one is productive. Like, yeah, I guess the world needs plenty of what is it, the replacements quote? World needs plenty of bartenders, but like I used to bartend, so no offense to bartenders, but like I don't want my kids, and if they want to go do whatever they can, that's fine.
Right.
They can make their own decisions, but I want them to have the agency to be able to make that decision for themselves and not because there's the societal constraints or pressure from me or my wife or anybody to push them down that path, and like let them make their own decisions. And I think that that's so important with some bumpers because kids can be absolutely stupid, as we all were, and like, but allowing that, like giving them enough rope to hang themselves, like, and like letting them make those mistakes on their own and not smashing them for a mistake that isn't that big of a deal in the big scheme of things.
Right. No, I agree completely. And that's where, like, I think when we're like, because I said so, like that whole thing, like you strip the ability to think critically out of kids, and when you're like, hey dad, can I do this? I'm like, okay, but you have this going on too. So how are you going to do both of these things? Okay. Hey, will you give me $20 for this? I'm like, yeah, but like, how are you going to earn $20 to go do this thing that you want to do? Well, I'll clean out your truck. Okay. That'll be good. We can trade that, or anything else that like we, teach them to do or allow them to do. Like it is absolutely like teaching kids to think critically. And like I love our public school system here in Quincy, but I think overall, like the school system teaches kids to learn or teaches kids to like pass tests rather than actually teaching them how to learn. And like I want my kids to learn, even if it hurts. I could care less they fail tests. Like I want them to figure out like, okay, why didn't I pass that?
They should fail tests.
100%.
Right. Like this idea of this zero sum, zero failure, like system. Like I think I've talked about it on this podcast before, but like I saw this cartoon probably 10, 20 years ago in like a paper, and it was a public school setting. All the kids are sitting in the rows in their desks, and they've all got these different shaped thought bubbles, and the teacher's walking behind them and cutting them all into squares. And that's like just always stuck out in my brain, and like, and like we're not putting our kids, at least when they're young, maybe later on, into the school system. And like I watch it with my son, like he's 3, and this isn't like I'm not trying, like he's delayed in certain areas, like he doesn't, but like his learning is so fast. And like my wife's a teacher, so like I'm lucky in that regard, like by trade. She doesn't work anymore, but like this kid can count to 50 at 3. He can count, he can like say his ABCs, like he knows all the sounds. He's starting to pick up reading on his own just through like recognition. He loves this song White Buffalo by Ian Munsick, and like Buffalo was up on the screen and he was like Buffalo. And like he's like, and it's like when you just let them do these things and learn and then like learn how to learn, and then you're not forcing it, versus like especially our young boys, man, like we're killing them, we're neutering them. Like when I was in high school, it was like you were university or your tech track. And like I tested really highly. I was not a great student, but I tested well. So like university. Of course, my parents pressured, got to go to college. I was terrible in college. I had no business going to college when I did. If I'd gone later, I would have gotten way more out of it. But like I also like sitting in a classroom doing this. Like, it wasn't how I learned. Like, I'm a hands-on. I needed to do it. Like, I would have been way better if I'd gone like done woodworking and shop and mechanics and all these things that I wanted to learn
Right.
because they're like skills and valuable skills. And it's like, why is it this either or? Why do we have this dichotomy of like, and then it's like there's almost like a lesser, like, oh, they're tech track.
Yeah.
They're all making more money than freaking up we are with college
Yeah,
degrees.
I was a plumber for 11 years. So I got the whole tech track. I'm working on my doctorate right now too. So I got the whole like high education part of it.
It's
Like
just,
I'm all over the place, but I agree with you.
it's good,
Yeah.
but you're well rounded. Like, I'm probably going to go back and get my MBA, but like, I'm also doing handyman work and like renovation stuff.
Yep.
And like, like, why can't we, teach our skill or these skills? And like, that's something that it helped me in the army because I had like 7 or 8 jobs before I commissioned into the army, which like a lot of guys coming in, like they go straight to a commissioning source. So they go from their parents' house to college and then they go and they become a second lieutenant in the army, right? And they have no life experience outside of like living with mom. And if they go to like an academy or they go to like a senior military college like I did, like they're in a very structured, like you don't have a lot of like, I lived by myself. I moved out of my parents' house when I was like 18 or 19. I had, and like gave me such a different perspective to be able to relate with like the junior enlisted guys and the NCOs to the point that like most of the time everybody thought I was prior service because when I look old, because I'm aging like soured milk. But like the other thing is because I had worked manually, I worked on cattle operation, I worked construction, I'd done all these things that then allowed me, I could talk. That's why when I did bartend, I was good at it because I could talk to anybody about anything. So I had this wide range of experiences.
Yeah.
And when we limit our kids to these like one thing, like you're going to go to high school, you're going to be in all the AP classes, no offense, Carter, you're going to test, you're going to get a 32 on your ACT, you're going to go to Harvard, it's like, you have nothing to draw from. And then we wonder why our kids go into college and they just get absolutely indoctrinated because they don't have anything to draw from experience to be like, maybe that's not real because my experience tells me otherwise. I just have to take the words from this person in an authority position as gospel. But yeah, I went way off the rails on that one, but
well, the other thing I noticed, not to make it about teaching, but like I spend more time with a lot of my students than their parents do, and that's very clear. It is a position of authority, and there's a lot of absent parents that are just working, they're grinding, make a lot of money, right? Yeah. Real kids. I teach at a private school. They clearly do very well, but I grew up in a privileged household as well, but my dad wasn't at any of my birthdays except for the year I was born, right? And so like that's why I shifted a different direction. That's why I like being at home with my kids. And they're very impressionable, right? They're very impressionable, and that opens that door for what you're talking about in college. And I think more often than not, those positions of authority, teachers or whoever it is, are happy to indoctrinate and share their ideals instead of letting the kids figure it out for themselves.
It's happened in elementary schools. I mean, both schools Caroline worked at since we've been together, like she'd have teachers that were just, and this is like kindergarten to 3rd grade, it's what she taught. And that was when I was like, no. And Caroline was actually against us pulling them out of the school system when we didn't have kids at this point. But when I started seeing this, and then COVID opened it up even more, and then Caroline eventually like saw it too, and she's like, I will not go back to a public school system because like the teachers aren't able to do what they want to do anyways. Like the whole system is flawed in a lot of ways. And there's gems, there's great teachers throughout. So this isn't like a bashing of teachers. It's the system that hamstrings the teachers. They were forcing kindergartners to do standardized tests on a computer. Caroline had to follow a script. These kids are having anxiety attacks. They don't know how to use the computer because this was a poor area. They didn't have access to computers in the classroom in Eastern Colorado. And like, and so like they're getting on a computer. They have to take this test. She's like by state mandate can only read from the script, can only like to fucking kindergartners. What are we doing?
Well, that's how you end up with teachers who are the because I said so kind of individuals because their hands are tied.
Yeah.
And they have no power, right? And they're just happy to, not even happy, but they're unhappy to have a job. And that complacency is dangerous when we're thinking about our kids.
I think it goes back to like just active and involved parents. So like when you're talking through like, hey, how was your day at school today? Those things. Oh, we took this test. Okay. What was the test about? What did you learn? How did that like how'd that sit with you? I don't play a whole lot on feelings. I think feelings are good. They're fine. They're not like final.
I love it, dude. The whole feeling and like feelings are valid thing is the most nonsensical bullshit that we're preaching. Well, there's a lot of nonsensical bullshit, but this like
yeah,
every feeling is valid thing, I freaking hate it. I've had this,
yeah.
anyways. Continue, but like I got something on this.
No, I mean, I'm with you. I think like feel what you need to feel. That's fine, but like don't make a like lifelong decision based on a feeling that's going to be over in 5 minutes when you have a Snickers and chill the hell out. Like just calm down for a minute. Back to rule number one: don't freak out. But I think when we sit there and we talk with kids about how was your day, what did you learn today, like those conversations that a lot of parents aren't having with their kids because they're either too busy, too tired, or just honestly don't give a shit. That's where we have the problem. It's like in, Carter, the position you're in, like we put educators in a hell of a position as parents, like, cause we expect them to be parent, educator, mental health person, doctor in some cases, provider for, all of your physical needs. If a kid comes to school because, they don't have something like, oh, can you get me a pair of shoes or whatever? Like we've put these educators in a hell of a bind because parents aren't doing their jobs. And I don't think it's always because parents don't want to, it's they don't know how to. And I don't know how to like mediate that other than like you have to take responsibility for your life. Like you can be dealt a shit hand and that's fine, but it's your job to change it.
Yeah.
And when you throw up your hands and you're like, oh, I just don't know what to do, like doing nothing's not an option. Not like I I love/hate the Brene Brown thing on empathy, where it like, I don't know if you guys seen this video, they like crawl down the ladder in the hole. And I'm like, I'll sit there with you in the hole and like help you figure stuff out for a minute. But at some point, you got to get out of there. You're both going to get buried alive.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to sit here and die with you. So, like, I'll help you figure out whatever you need to figure out. Like, and I will be your biggest supporter, your biggest advocate, whatever you need, to parents, to kids, whoever. But at some point, you got to move. Like, you got to make the call. You can't sit there and just be, in your feelings or sad about your situation forever. Like, you have to step up and take a chance and do something. Like I said, I've got every excuse in the world to not be doing the stuff that I'm doing. My life doesn't make sense. I shouldn't be a CEO. I shouldn't be doing the stuff I'm doing. It doesn't make sense, but I won't quit. And I'm not done, like by any means. Like I'm 42. I'm really just getting started. Like this is going to be just a crazy ride. And like, then I know the next part of this is what my kids are going to do. So I got a freshman, like she's, 4 years from being in college and going off to some place where who knows where she's going to go to school. She actually was talking about doing military the other day. And I was like, all right, that's a new conversation. Let's look at this, and I'm like, I didn't have the guts to do that when I was in school. Like just no bullshit. I just didn't have the guts to do it. Too scared. But she's like, I think I could really benefit from like discipline and just, it's going to challenge me. It's going to push me. And I was like, I'm freaking proud of you just for having a conversation. Like, holy crap. So like, she's looking at doing those things. And when we're talking about building kids who are resilient, who push themselves, who challenge themselves, that comes back to the parents. They have to learn that somewhere. That's not hardwired in them. They're not going to get it at school. They're not going to get it from reading a book. Like, they're not. Like, parents have to live out a life of resilience and ownership and not making excuses and just getting stuff done. Like, they have to see it. And if it's not from a parent, it has to come from a non-familial mentor. It has to come from somebody who's going to invest in kids' lives. And that's been an avenue that, I've been blessed to be able to be a part of in nonprofit work, whether it's in youth ministry or, in organizations like the Y, like I'm working at now, like being able to build programs and be involved in programs or coached athletics, basketball or whatever, where we can teach kids like, hey, this is hard. Like I loved coaching basketball and I got brought in to do conditioning and all the girls on the team are like, oh crap, Maddie's dad's here to do conditioning. I'm like, yeah, so you're going to do broad jumps and you're going to do sprints until your quads are on fire. And then we're going to do wall sits. You know why? Because in the fourth quarter, when the other team's like just dragging ass and gasping for air, you're going to be fine because you're going to have felt this before. When they get down to play a close game, they were fine. It's teaching kids those things, but they have to have somebody to teach them to do it. And that's where we need more people to step into this. We need more dads to step up and do hard stuff. Like I am ridiculously hard on guys, on dads. Like sorry, dads, if you can't like do pull-ups, if you can't protect, provide, and defend your family, like what the hell are you doing? Like you
Just so
have to be
fucking
able to do
purpose.
those things. It's it. It's protect, provide, and defend.
Literally, yeah.
Like what are you doing?
We are here to ensure that our children and our wives can live because we're the least valuable part of this entire,
Yep.
animal pack. Like that's why the men are the ones that go off to war. It's why we give up the lifeboats. It's all that we're expendable.
Yep.
And like, if you don't have that mentality, like I don't know what you're doing, honestly. And like, and we're losing it. Like we've got either absentee fathers that aren't in the household, or fathers that don't take it seriously, and that are just they think that providing is just making a paycheck that then funds whatever, and they're not involved, they're not engaged, they're not trying to better themselves. And I'm not saying this from a person who's there, because I'm not, but at least I know where I'm like, where I at least know that I am failing in ways, and it's like consistently like getting better. How do we fix this? But it's a freaking epidemic across Western culture. And we've got just 2 to 3 generations of weak men. And it's why we are where we are. And we've got to fix it. And we've got to have folks that come together, that have these conversations, that talk about, like, I love that you have rules, like, within your house. Like, how many folks actually define a value set that they then communicate that for their family, like codified, like on paper. And it's something like, and it's funny because like I'm working on mine, like my son can't understand it. And like there's things that Caroline and I repetitively talk about, but like I'm gonna have a list, like a mantra, when my son's old enough. And like the first one is, and it's right in line with yours, it's respond, don't react, which is don't freak out. Same thing, right? Like respond, don't react, because everything else comes from there. And then integrity, and like who are we, like in men, we don't develop personal codes now for like what are our left and right limits, right? We've talked about this on like some of our mindset calls. It's like you have to have that. I spent most of my early life just ethical drift, just back and forth. Like I look at, like, I could have gotten arrested, I could have gone to jail, my whole life could have turned out totally different, like the stuff I was mixed up in and doing, and I was just like not on the right track. And it's because I didn't have a defined set of core values. I could have ruined my marriage before it even started. And like there's just all these things that, like, if one thing had gone a little bit different, I would be in a completely different position. And because I know that, like, I can sit here and like I can rationalize my way into anything, I've had to like create super hard lines for myself on what my core values as a man are, that are clearly defined, and words have meaning. And like we have to know what those, like, what's the difference between like integrity and honor. Like most people don't know, like, and those things mean 2 very different things that are intrinsically linked. But it's like we just lose that. Nobody talks about it anymore. Like if you were to like talk about honor, people would think you'd be like cheesy, but like there's a reason it was like every code of like men and warriors throughout history had these very, very clearly defined. It's why the military has these creeds and these mantras and these things that nobody follows, nobody gives a shit about. You memorize them because you have to for your board or whatever you're going to, but people don't personify them anymore. And I think we're just losing this, and we're just in this perpetual state of ethical drift where nobody has any clear lines at all.
No, I'm huge on like a personal mission statement, and then our 3 main rules for our family, and they've just always been, and it's fantastic. So don't freak out. Is rule number 1. Rule number 2: if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough. Like actions have consequences. So if you're doing something stupid, it's going to hurt. Madison, when she was little, she kept walking up and trying to touch the grill, and I told her twice, like, hey, it's hot, don't touch that. And the 3rd time I just stopped. I was like, okay. And she touched it and she burned her finger. She's 14. She still talks about it. She was 2. But it's like, okay, actions have consequences. I've got a picture of her sitting on a mini excavator that same afternoon, and she's got her finger pointed out because that's the one that she burnt. And if I show her that picture, she's like, that's the day I touched the grill. Like, she remembers that. And rule number 3 is you're not in charge. Like, there's always somebody over you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where that is. That's at work. If you're, a person of faith, like you believe in God who's in charge, like, there's always someone who's above you who's in charge. Like, you're not in charge. Like, there's always someone to answer to. in this life or the next. So those 3 rules are kind of what we built. We've just built our family on here. There's several others we'll throw in the mix just for fun later on. Like Rule 5, we'll just make them up kind of on the fly. But those core 3, have been the ones that just define our family, and that's been a blast to do because like we see other kids now picking up on that, and it's like it's really funny because somebody will do something stupid at school, and Madison's like, yeah, I had to tell them rule number 2, or Tori or Abby, either one, like, yeah, rule number 2. And then I'll get some kid come up to me at a ball game and be like, hey, I heard about rule number 2. I'm like, yeah, it's funny. Like, it's great. And for me personally, it's like I want to inspire people to hope on the largest scale possible. Like I want every person that has an interaction with me to leave better, to leave more hopeful, to leave more empowered, more encouraged about reaching their potential. And for me to do that, like I have to live my life again in such a way where I'm pushing the limit all the time. And some people think I'm crazy, and that's fine. They can think that. That's absolutely cool. Me and my buddy Tad, a couple weeks ago, they have a turkey run here. It's a 5K. We did Thanksgiving.
All the pictures.
And like, we did it in vests, and we relayed a 100-pound sandbag between the 2 of us for a 5K because we want to push. And I had people afterward that were like, you are just showing off or whatever. I'm like, that's fine. Like, it doesn't bother, like, people can think whatever they want to think. It doesn't bother me anymore. And, if it did bother me, yeah, you're going to do dumb stuff. You got to be tough, like get thick skin, jumping into politics and into a life of significance, really kind of showed me that. Like, you got to be tough if you're going to try to have an impact anywhere. And when you're going to do things that are uncommon, to push yourself, like you're going to get pushback from people, and they're not going to understand, and they're going to try to like pull you back into that life of comfortability and of that box that society wants you in, that makes them feel comfortable. And that's totally cool. Like if they want to live there, that's fine, but that's not me. Like my last day will be my best day. I will push until the day I die. Like I will get better all the time. And if that's not cool and people don't want to run that way, that's fine. I'm teaching my kids the same thing. I'm like, hey, if kids don't want to work as hard as you do, if they don't want to come in and shoot baskets, if they don't want to go lift weights, if they don't want to, read books, if they don't want to do this stuff, then that's okay. Like that's their prerogative. That's what they want to do. Like that doesn't mean you can't be friends with them. It doesn't mean you're not going to be nice to them, but that means that they're not on the same trajectory that you are, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Someday, they may look back at that and be like, damn, I wish I would have done what they did. I wish I wouldn't have made so many excuses. I wish I would have gone to the gym. I wish I would have done those things. And by then it'll probably be too late. And I think for a lot of people in culture, a lot of dads, they wake up in a hospital bed someday and they're like, what the hell happened? How did I get here? And it's too late. And kids see that and they live into the exact same lifestyle. They make the same decisions because they don't know anything different. And, I think that's just a sad part. Like, Goggins, like most people will die without ever realizing what they're truly capable of. They'll live a life so mediocre and so far below what they were made to live that they'll never know. There's my favorite quotes, this Christian poet named Irma Bombeck said, when I stand before God at the end of my life, I hope to not have 1 ounce of talent left. And I hope to say I used everything that you gave me. Like die empty and just push and, challenge our kids to do that too. Like go for all of it. You can really do whatever you want. You can. You can be born in a trailer park and be an astronaut. There is no limit. You absolutely can. But you have to decide that's what you're running at. And you have to do all the stuff that requires. And the sad part is it's hard. And people don't do hard well.
No, and it only gets harder. And that's been something that I've learned over the last year, really, is like you always think like, oh, I'm pushing the boulder up the hill. And I've used that analogy with Carter a bunch. Like, oh, I can see the top. I've realized now that there is no top because it doesn't matter. Like, and Caroline and I talked about this because I, told her like, oh, we just got to get through this next 2 months. And she finally looked at me, and this was like 2 months ago, and she was like, I don't think so. I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, you're not going to change or stop.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then I had to like look at myself and be like, okay, like,
right.
why am I doing this? What, like, reevaluate some things. Like, so am I just chasing this for ego or for whatever, you know? And like, I always want to be mindful of that because like I have issues with ego, and it's something I always have to course correct on. And it's like, back to our previous piece, like, no, this is because I'm building a legacy for my family and all these other things and like setting the example for my kids. But then it's like accepting, like, it just as sucks. And like, I'm not chasing happiness. I had to tell her this. She was like, I just want you to be happy. I was like, I don't want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled. And like, there's a big difference there. Like, happy is fleeting. Happy is not real. Happy is bullshit. And like, the greatest lie of the last 100 years is like, we should chase happiness. Like, be happy. I've watched people chase their happiness and like ruin their marriages, ruin their relationships, lose their kids, like all this shit for happiness because they're not fucking happy. Happy is a temporary state of mind. Fulfillment is completely different. And getting to the end, and I think it might actually be Goggins. He had that, and it's right in line with that quote from the poet. But it was just like, you know, my biggest fear is like dying and seeing God. And he holds up, you know, like my resume and then the resume that he intended for me, you know? And it's like, fuck, like, this is what I was supposed to do. This is who I could have been, and this is who I was.
Yeah.
And that is something that like I think about constantly. And it's like, if you want these things, like where we want, this is Hermosai talks about this, like if we were to take our kids and we want them to have like high character, you know, work ethic, resilience, all, like, you have to go through all the bad shit to get those traits. You can't build the skills and the character and all these things if you're not in the position to get there. And so we want the end state, but we're not willing to do what's in between. And it's harder than you can. I mean, it was the founder of NVIDIA was, you know, one of the richest guys on the planet. And they asked him, like, what would you do differently? And he said, I wouldn't do it. Like, if I knew what I do now, I wouldn't do it because it's so much harder than I ever could have even fathomed that it was. There's no way I would sign up for this again. And like, that hit me. I was like, all right, like, I get it. Cause like, if I had known what I would go through over the last couple of years, I wouldn't have bought the fucking sewing machine. I'd have figured something else out. Like, for real. Like, I've almost got, like, I've got hit with like you know, just all this stuff, like shit you can't pay. And you're like, how are we going to do this? Or like, you're just grinding and you just get exhausted. It's like, but it's worth it because I am so different than I was 2 years ago, a year ago. Like, I look back on things, it's like, it propels your development, your growth, and your maturation so much faster when you put yourself in uncomfortable positions. At a certain point, you get so much stress, so busy that all the shit that you used to worry about just falls off because you can't. It's like a forcing function to like respond, not react. Because if you just react or you freak out, like you're going to live in that perpetually, and it just makes everything like better, I guess. You know, for like it just in a way, in some ways it's not, but it just forces that growth.
Yeah, I think it comes back also to like, I don't know, I got several thoughts just on what you said there, but like your why. Like, why are you doing the stuff that you're doing? Are you doing it for ego? Are you doing it to get, you know, rich, famous, whatever? Are you doing it to be successful? Or are you doing it to be someone of significance? Like, I had a pretty big gut check when I was considering leaving construction, like doing plumbing. I was top guy at the company I worked for, salaried, you know, obviously like career in plumbing, like you're pretty secure, like, and considering leaving that and going into the nonprofit world where I had to fundraise for my paycheck, took a pretty significant pay cut. Like, it sounds like career suicide, right? But I had a buddy I went to high school with, still a great friend. But he told me, he's like, at some point, you're going to have to make the choice between a life of significance and a life of financial success. He's like, somebody's going to put the money in front of you and be like, hey, like, do this or live the life that you're supposed to live. And that choice between a life of significance and a life of success. And what I've learned over the last 12 years of all that is you can live a successful life by like our cultural standards. You can live a successful life and you can die and nobody will have a freaking clue who you are. You can live a successful life and be completely insignificant. You can never live a significant life without being successful. If you live a life that is absolutely significant to the people around you, adding value, continuing to level up, continuing to have an impact, you will always be successful. It may not be in the financial realm, but it will be a life that is successful because of the significance. The inverse is not always true. And we can try to push and become successful and think that that's going to make us happy or that's going to bring us fulfillment. But at the end of the day, it's just another thing. But when you chase significance, when you chase what can I give away, that's a whole different ball game. And it'll cost you everything. You're absolutely right. Like I've lost some of the best friends that I ever thought that I would have in the world that I thought would be like ride or dies. We're not. Like we don't talk anymore. And it sucks. Because those are some of like the most impactful relationships that I've ever had. And they were at key times in my life where I needed those friends. And then it's, it blows up and it's like whatever it is. And it's like, okay, like that was a great friendship for that season. But even being able to look on those in gratitude, and it's not just one, it's multiple. Like it will cost you everything. It'll cost you friends. It'll cost you family. It'll cost you money. It'll cost you time, energy, sleep. I mean, you name it, it's going to cost you literally everything in the name of what can I give away? Like what can I learn? What can I earn? What can I work for? What can I challenge myself with? Where can I suffer more so that somebody else doesn't have to? So my kids don't have to. Or so I can teach my kids how to suffer well to get where they want to go. And what can I give away? And people will look at you and be like, you're a narcissist or you're just so self-centered or you're so self-focused. And you're like, man, I totally understand how it could look like that. But the thing you don't get is everything I'm doing is to give away because I want somebody else to not have to carry the weight that I'm carrying right now, but I'm willing to do it. Like Milet says in that book too, like he's the one. And how do you know that you're the one? You just know. He knows he's the one, or he knows that the people reading, I think that's how he says it. The people, I know that, you're the one because you're reading the book because I'm the damn one. Like I'm the one in my family who's going to change the direction for my kids. I will take that weight on me if it kills me. I don't care because this is where everything changes. Like I'll carry that weight. I will do whatever I can to make that shift, to give it away. Like it's not about me. Nothing's about me. It's about what can I do to build community? What can I do to build stronger kids? What can I do to make the place around me, this community that I live in, better, all the time? And that's what I chase. That's the why. Inspire people to hope, inspire communities to hope on the largest scale possible. And that's, that starts with my wife and it starts with my kids. Showing them like building warriors that are going to be change agents that are going to chase the same stuff that I chase. The ripple effect from that's going to be massive. And it's not for us. It's for everybody that we come into contact with.
I've talked to Carolyn about that with I'm so excited to watch my kids move because I was so slow. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I had all this shit I had to deal with and work through and all my bullshit that I came out with, it slowed me down so much, and it's why I am the way I am. So I wouldn't change it.
Right.
If I can get them through, I'm going to fuck stuff up, right? With the kids. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But if they can come out with 60, 70% less nonsense, and then I can teach them these things from three, from just resilience, from, restraining them all the way through, when they're go through their phase where I don't know anything, which I'm hoping to avoid through the relationship. We'll see. I think some of it's natural, especially with boys and their fathers, but they're going to be able to do so much. And that is why that, and I'm I don't think you put that so well, put that out there so well, is that's my why, right? Yes, when Caroline asked me why, what's my end state for all this, it's I just freedom, because the closest thing you can be to free in 2024 in the world is true financial freedom, right?
Yeah.
It's the only you're never truly free in this country, right? You don't even own property, you're just paying rent on it,
right,
to the government. But it's the closest thing is true. I don't have to make any decision based on money. And it's not because I want to hoard money. It's because I want the ability to then take that money, continue to grow it, build a legacy for my family, and then put it to use in the community with other people to be able to employ the people that have, that are good folks, and give them a direction. Because not everybody can do. And this is where I start the ego thing. I'm always this back and forth, and I like people. It comes across as narcissistic sometimes, but it's I know I can do this. I can bear the burden. I can sit here my everything that led me up to this point is I have the resilience. I can get punched in the face every single day and just keep dealing with it. And because I can, then I need to.
I mean, it's back to Peterson, build, carry the strongest burden you can for the benefit of yourself, your family, and your community.
Yep.
What is the biggest burden you can bear? And I think the answer for most of the population in that is figuring out what is the max of your life. Like, what are you supposed to do? And going after that with everything. I think we're all born with passions. I was telling some students the other day at a career fair, like when I was in like 8th grade, I took an assessment and I was like, I wanted to help kids. Like oh, cool. I'll be a pediatrician. No, I suck at chemistry. Like, absolutely not. I only passed chemistry in college because a buddy of mine was friends with the TA. Like, literally the only reason. There was no chance in hell I was passing that class. So it wasn't going to work. But I wanted to help kids. I wanted to help, families and stuff like that. And I got the chance to do that in working in nonprofit. And I still get to do that on a whole different scale now. But like, we have those passions, but what can we do to actually chase those? Because they're scary. It's just a giant fear. And I think people let that fear of like, oh my gosh, what if I really can do this? What if I really chase this? That fear for a lot of people is greater than the fear that they're just going to wake up at 80 years old and be like, I wasted my entire freaking life. And I don't want that to be the case for anybody that's, in proximity to me. Like, I want to help them figure out, like, how do you go and chase what you're passionate about? And I sit here and I do that with my kids too. It's like, what do you want to do? Like, Maddie wants to go to school, maybe the military, but she wants to end up being a math teacher and a basketball coach back here in Quincy, where she's from. All right, cool. I'm going to help you do that. How are you going to do that? Like, Abby, my youngest, is two belt tests away from being a black belt in Taekwondo at 10 years old. She'll be almost 11 when she does her black belt test. Like, that's what she wants to do right now. And after that, she just wants to play basketball. So she's getting dropped off at the Y 2 days a week to where she can shoot 50 free throws on her own, so she can be really good on her basketball team that I get to coach this winter. My middle daughter, Tori, she wants to make state and shot put this year. So she's coming and working out and doing those things. I want them to reach those goals. My wife, the toughest person that I freaking know. Like, she's just a beast. So she just is. I've never met anybody as tough as her, and I probably won't. But helping her figure out how to do her job to the best of her ability, how to be a person of impact and influence there. Like, I want to help her figure that out. And when I figure those things out here, it helps me, expand that into, community too. And that's what, I want to do. And I think when we engage with people that way, it changes things, but it has to start at home.
Yeah, I think that's a good call to action for anybody listening. And I'm inspired now. I want to do that and sit down with Robin. And then, I don't know, maybe my oldest is even old enough to participate, but what is our family? What are our core values? Where are we going? I didn't have a 5-year plan until Luke made me do that a couple years ago.
You got to.
Which was massively helpful because I was just fucking living life, bruh. And
most people are.
Yeah, for sure.
For real.
Yeah. And I don't know, this conversation has me excited to do it for the family and involve the kids. I never thought about it like that. Yeah.
It's fun, man. Like, I don't know. I think the last thing that I said on the notes was like, remember the name, like something about the name on the back of the jersey. Remember Madison's first basketball game where she had her name said Sethaler on the back of her shirt. And my grandfather, my grandfather and my uncle, outside of my stepdad growing up, were the two largest like male influences in my family. And Madison, like, sitting there on the bench that day with her name on the back of her shirt. It's the first time she'd ever had Sethaler on the back of a shirt. And my grandfather was there. And before the game even started, I set her down and I said, "Hey, whose name's on your shirt?" My name. I was like, "Hey, who else?" "You and Mom." "Who else?" "My sister." "Who else?" "Who else is tied to that name?" "Well, Nana and Papa." "Yeah." "Who else?" "Grandpa over here." "Right." I said, so when you're out there on that floor, that's not just your name. Like, that's the name of everyone else in our family that is tied to it. So when people see that name, what do you want them to think? And she's little. I mean, she's like 7, 8 years old at the time. but she remembers that conversation because whose name is on your shirt? Like that matters. Like that's legacy. Who are you representing in all of those things? And we don't teach kids that part of legacy. It's like just do whatever you want, have fun, play video games, do nothing, smoke weed, drink, go hang out with your friends, whatever. We don't teach them to be, Luke, like you said, people of honor. Like honor that name on that damn shirt. Like that matters. Like when people hear your name, like what do they think? What do they think of your family? Like, we have that in our own community. Like you hear a last name and you're like, oh, that family. Not us. Remember whose name's on your shirt. When you're doing this, if you're listening and you're thinking like, man, what do people think of when they think of my family? Like you have the ability to change that. You do it in how you parent your kids. You do it in the way that you live your life. Become people of integrity, people of honor, people who inspire other people and people who have other people's best interests at heart over self. Remember whose name's on your shirt.
Carter's probably tired of hearing it, but I say, I say this on repeat, but there's three things in this world that like nobody can take away from you, like your word, your mind, and your name. And like,
Yep.
and that's right. And hand in hand with that, like and I just always refer back to that. Like, am I going, it's back to the, talking about the Scottish warriors, right? Like
Yeah.
there's these men that, and women that came before me that have done all these things. Like, what am I doing to honor that name, to continue that legacy? Like my family did some really, epic shit to get me here to this point.
Yeah.
They've traveled the world. They fought every war since since Lord Dunmore's war. And then, others like, and my dad told me those stories and like it shaped who I was. And I think it's important that we, as parents, we tell that. And like, you don't have to have some crazy family story. It can just be like your grandfather worked his ass off day in and day out.
Right.
So, I could go to college. So then, you could be in the position that you're in, or whatever that story is.
Right.
Tell it, teach it.
Yeah.
Like your name means something. Like when you put your name on a product that you're doing in your job, like what does that mean? Like when your boss sees it, do they look at it and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to have to freaking go in and spend 3 hours fixing this.
Right.
It's just good enough not to get fired. Or is it like, I put my name on this, it fucking means something. Like this is like high quality work. I put the effort in. Like, no, I agree. I mean, I love this conversation, man. It has nothing to do with hunting, lifting, or eating, but I think that on the mindset side, which we need to get back into doing more of these conversations, because HLE is kind of just the window dressing for a lot deeper of the thing, which you've been a part of for a long time, and I appreciate it. But we need more leaders out there that are talking about it, that are not afraid. I think we just get the societal pressure to not speak these things because it's not maybe cool, or it's not well received, or it feels like it's preachy or whatever. Like, if we don't have these conversations, then these younger folks don't know what the actual expectations are, right? If we walk past something and allow it to happen, like, then that becomes okay. This is an issue in the Army, right? Like, you if you're a leader in the Army and soldiers doing something they're not supposed to do, like walking outside without their cover on, like something stupid, right? And I'm a captain, company commander. I walk past it. Well, that becomes the new standard because I didn't like correct it and address it. And Absolutely. This will be the last little thing that I story I tell, but I think this is important because it was a big wake up call for me with talking about honor and integrity. And these are like things in the Army that are preached all the time. Infidelity is rampant in the military, rampant. And it's something that like I've been exposed to. I know a lot of guys that have done it. Personally, it's not what I don't put myself in those positions. Like I took it seriously when I married my wife. And I put myself in bad positions early on prior to that. And I don't do that. Like I never did, but like I just have really hard left to right limits. I don't associate with people that do it. I'm not going to just live in that world. And it's so rampant. And like so many leaders don't fucking say anything about it because it's like, oh, it's not my business. And the way I look at this is like, if you're going to cheat on your spouse, that person that you like stood in front of and like swore yourself to in front of God, the world, your friends and your family, and you'll break that vow, then I can't trust you on any other level at all, ever. Because I don't rack and stack anywhere to where that vow was in that relationship.
Right.
And it's something that like needs to, it's actually against the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Like if you cheat on your spouse, you can be taken to court martial for it or separated from the military, but it's not enforced at all. And it's rampant. And it's either quietly or even certain units openly like allowed or encouraged. Like my sergeant major, he got fucking fired. I hope he won't listen to this, but I hope he does. He's a piece of shit. He was 7 kids, had a girlfriend in Poland, right? Like when we were in Eastern Europe, and Eastern Europe was rampant for that stuff. And I had a soldier, and I had overlooked it a lot. Like just, it's not, it's just not like, I just sat there and it's just like, this is just how it is. It's coming. I knew I was getting out. I was just getting sick and tired of it. It was just everywhere. And I had one of my guys, I was sitting in the MWR, which is like a little morale welfare Rex that were watching football or something, drink a couple beers. And we had an Italian unit that was stationed with us. And this kid, he's probably early 20s, wife, new baby at home. And pretty good kid, tried to do well, but didn't have a lot of, you can tell he's just still figuring it out. He just gotten promoted into being an NCO and very junior leader, but he walks in with 2 of the Italian chicks. And I had probably, 2-3 beers, just enough to and just be so annoyed in general. And I was just like, I called him over. I was like, E, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, you have a fucking baby at home. And he looked at me and he was like, oh, sir, we're just friends. And I'm like, really? I was like, what position are you putting yourself in right now? And he just walks off. And it was just like, whatever. Like, I just go back to football. I hang out for like another 30, 45 minutes. And somebody like walks behind me and sits down. I look over and it's E. And he looks over at me and he's like, sir, nobody's ever told me that that's not okay before. And we sat there. We talked for 3 hours. We were up to like 2 a.m. talking about all this stuff. And that was like, and that's like one of the things that I just like looking back, I realized that was the tail end of what I was doing. If I had started having those conversations 11 years prior, what level of influence could I have had? And like when he said that, like nobody's ever told me that I shouldn't, that's wrong. And then that led to a 3-hour conversation about integrity and then his marriage and his problems. And like, we got to unpack, and it was like this moment of, like that I was like, man, like we have got to draw the line, set the line, and then fucking talk about it. So these folks that don't know can learn. When I was a basic training commander, I would have, during their introduction briefing, I would have the privates raise their hands if they had a male, or if they didn't have a male role model in the picture. And it was like 80-90%, of the classes. And like 80-90% were joining the army to get out of a bad situation. Like that's who's coming into the military. But it's the military is a great microcosm of society as a whole. And so if it's there, it's the same thing everywhere else. And we've got to start fixing it at our own level, right? Like ranting politics at Thanksgiving isn't going to change shit. No. Being leaders, setting examples, living our lives the right way to set that example, and having these conversations. That's how we affect change.
Yeah. No, I think it's a take on a Desmond Tutu quote, but like if you're silent in situations, I think he said like of injustice, like you've chosen the side of the oppressor. But if you're silent in situations where you have the opportunity to speak up, you've condoned the behavior. So like if you get that like twinge in your gut of like, oh, somebody should say something, like, yeah, freaking say something. Like don't sit there and just not, because we have to draw that line somewhere. And kind of, I don't know, this isn't like hunting, lifting, or eating, like you said, but this is like what this team has been, for me, in a large part of just the community of people challenging each other to be better. Excuse me. And, I think from like that first interview that I did to be a part of the team, was just so challenged. I'd never been a part of an interview process for something to be like an ambassador or anything in a program like this. I was like, holy shit, like this is a different deal. Like I like this a lot. And then subsequent hero weeks and just being in the chats and everything else, like we need more of this, of people, having conversations, holding each other accountable, pushing each other to be better, inspiring each other to be better, and calling out stuff when we see it. Like this is what the world needs more of. It needs more of stuff like Hunt, Lift, Eat. And that's not a sales tactic by any means, but it's just the truth. Like we need more communities like this, especially for guys, where we can get together and hold each other accountable, no bullshit, and just be like, dude, like you're not towing the line. There's so much more you could be doing. Like get to work. Like what do you need? What do you need to actually do it? Like those are the people I want to roll with. You know, I'm fortunate here in my community. I got a couple of them. You know, and I know like across the country, I've got a bunch more because of this team. You know, it's a pretty cool thing to be able to rely on.
Yeah, it's so important to have a community and a tribe and accountability and surrounding, like, it's the old adage of like you are the sum of the folks you hang out with, and it's so real. And you were talking about like moving forward and dropping people off, like it is crazy. There's no animosity or ill will. Like, I mean, if I saw them
No,
on the street, hang out and chill, but it's like you're just going down a different path, and it gets pretty
right.
fucking lonely at a certain point, right? And like I even feel it now. Like I can just talk to like people I'm still like very close with on one side of my life, but like I can't talk to them about the other stuff because they just have no. Like I just was home for the family for two weeks, right? And like if you don't surround yourself deliberately with people that have those, they don't have to be perfectly aligned, but like they're at least on a macro level aligned with your vision and your goals for
Right.
progression. You got to have that, because if not, you just get super isolated. And there's going to be periods of isolation, but it's just like going out and finding that community and those people you can rely on, and then being somebody that's worth being friends with. I think that's an important thing too, because I've been a pretty shitty friend in periods of my life, and always thinking about
We
that.
all have.
What are we doing, right? And paying attention to it. But we'll wrap this one up. Carter, I'm sure, is trying to go to bed because it's late as shit on the East Coast. But I appreciate it, Curtis. This was a great conversation and a nice shift off of just talking about the whitetail rut. I think that more of these conversations need to take place, and we're definitely going to start getting back into some of these. We're going to be more deliberate, so we'll have you back on for sure.
Yeah, man. Happy to be on here.
You got anything to close us out? Any lasting words you want to leave us with?
Get to work. There's a lot left on the table.
What do you got, Carter?
No, I'm just excited, man. I love it. I known you for a while, Curtis, and I consider you a good friend. And I like just complimentary to you, man. I like guys that speak well of their kids and speak well of their spouses. So appreciate what you're doing, man, and really enjoyed this. This is kind of a cool way to kick off the week and go to work tomorrow. And things are
for
good.
sure. Thanks, man. Got squats first thing in the morning. Off we go.
That's right.
Hell yeah. Hope you guys got something out of this one. As always, we appreciate the hell out of you. Talk to you next week.